I'm going to show you how to put together the robotics kit that'll let you build a Lego-based robot using an Arduino. Right now I'm going to show you in particular how to just build this the top two plates here that are going to hold the batteries, which you can't see but I'll take them off, and the Arduino and a circuit board. And you'll see that this is just designed to snap into any kind of robot you want to build with Legos. I happen to have an extremely simple one here. And this mounting plate is got one particular Lego piece that is screwed into it, and that'll let you snap in any kind of Lego robot. So let's have a little unboxing video here. What you will have in the kit is this big case and this little one. This has just a bunch of Lego pieces, pins and gears and such. We won't need that right now. So inside this, we've got another container with some parts, and one bag that's going to have all the pieces to build that mounting kit, and more of the big Legos and motors and things of that sort. So right now all we're going to use is just the parts in this one bag. So we'll take these out, take a look at what we got. And what you'll see is that you've got a lower plate here. This is going to hold the two battery holders, one for 6 AA batteries, one for a 9-volt, and underneath it is going to be where the Lego piece will screw in. And then on the upper plate, these will be the 4 mounting holes for the Arduino, and this is the area where you can stick your breadboards to. All of the other big holes are just to let wires pass through, and then the 4 holes near the edges here will line up with the ones on the lower plate, and those are going to be used for a threaded rod that will connect the two plates together. So we'll take a look at these screws we've got, and basically you've got 2 kinds of screws. This may be a little hard to see. They're both number 4 screws, but one has a round head and one has a flat head. The round head ones are going to be used on the top plate for the Arduino. All of the flat-headed ones are going to be used for everything else. And then these are the threaded rods that you'll use to connect the two plates and the nuts that will go between them. The one thing you will probably want out of this other little container, you will want the 2 breadboards eventually, and you've also got a small screwdriver. Which actually has a different size thing you can switch to if you want to, but you'll probably just want the small one. Okay, so we're going to do the bottom plate first, and one thing to note is there's a silver triangle at one corner. In both cases, that's the top side, and it's the side you're going to just keep closest to you. Sort of conceptually, it's probably going to be the rear of your robot. So what you'll see is that these holes here, see there are 2 holes here and here for the AA battery mount, and those are going to overlap to some extent with the one that's going to go on the Lego underneath. So if you notice, this one hole for the Lego is going to be hidden underneath, so we're going to go ahead and do that one first. Again, you're going to take one of the flathead screws, We'll drop it through that one. It's the one that's sort of off to the side a little. You'll line it up with, again, this one hole on the Lego that's sort of off-center. And you'll go ahead and put on the nut. You may find it easier to hold it from underneath with the nut and then screw in the screw. These screws only need to be sort of finger tight, so you don't really need to use a pair of pliers to grab onto the nut, but if you wanted to, you could. You do want the screw to be fairly flat down. It'll stick up a little. And then you can see as you swing the holes, just sort of line it up so that the holes will go through there. So next you're going to put the AA battery holder on. I sort of suggest that you have the two wires coming out the right-hand side as you're looking from the back, just because when we put it together, the circuit board's going to be over here, the breadboards will be over here, and just be a slightly easier reach. So again, we're going to take two of the flat head screws. I'm going to drop that in, and it's going to go through this frontmost center hole up here. And can put the nut on to hold it. And before we tighten that down completely, we'll make sure it lines up by putting the other screw in also. And you may need to swing the Lego plate around a little so that the hole lines up. So that screw should be coming out the middle of your Lego piece and down here at the bottom of your battery holder. So again, we'll put the nut on here. And then I just sort of hold the nut in place with my finger while I'm screwing this in. If some other technique works for you, that's perfectly fine. Oops. So we'll just screw those in all the way. Again, you want to get these reasonably tight. They don't have to be super tight. Next, we're going to put in the 9-volt battery holder, which has 3 holes that will line up over here. So again, we'll take 3 more of the flathead screws. What you'll probably find is that in the 9-volt battery holder, the holes here are actually tight. They're not full clearance holes. So you're going to want to start these screws a bit, because the screw isn't going to just drop through them easily, and it's a little easier if you get these things going first before you try to line them up. And of course I accidentally grabbed a round head screw. Let's fix that. And try this again. So I'll get it going so that it pokes out a little from the other end there. And I'm going to go ahead and do this with the other two holes in the 9-volt holder. And again, we'll try to get that poking out a little bit. And third time's the charm. So now I will just line up these 3 screws with the 3 holes here. You'll see that that last hole in the Lego is going to line up as well. So now we'll just keep putting the screws through a bit more so that we can get the washer onto them. Sorry, the nut. And you may need to jiggle this just a little bit to make sure all the screws actually come through. Because let's face it, this board was not created by a precision machining process. And then we can just put the nuts on here. And try to get them reasonably tight. We need to push the Lego piece a little bit away in order to allow that nut to screw in tightly. Alright, so everything's good there. Now we've got our lower plate assembled. You'll probably want to go ahead and put your 9-volt battery and your 6 AA's in now, because once we finish assembling this thing, it's going to be pretty close, and so there isn't going to be space to put in the batteries later. Of course, you'll always be able to take off the top plate later if you need to replace the batteries, but for now, I recommend going ahead and popping the batteries in. The next thing you'll want to do is to go ahead and mount your Arduino, which you should already have elsewhere. These 4 holes will line up with these 4 holes here. Both the Mego and the Uno boards have the same holes. The way the Arduino board is designed, this one screw back here by the USB connector plug is actually really tight, and you may not be able to really get a screw in there, and that's fine. 3 screws will hold this thing just fine. This time you're going to want to use the round head screws, so you can just pop those in, line the Arduino up, and drop in the 3 screws. You may notice that you have an extra screw or two in the kit. That's just to handle the possibility, that one gets dropped and falls under a couch or something. So you can see these 3 screws will go in here, and we can put the nuts on. When you screw these on, you can tighten them a little with a screwdriver, but don't crank down hard because, of course, you've got a circuit board here, and you wouldn't want to try to go ridiculously hard and manage to end up cracking the board. You probably wouldn't, but better safe than sorry, and this Arduino is not going to go anywhere, even if this is just finger tight. Okay, so there's that. Now you should have these 2 sort of half-size breadboards, which are going to fit this way. You'll just peel off the sticky backing, and you can put them down in place. Try to leave this hole uncovered. It's just a convenient place to run wires through if you need to. One thing to note about these breadboards, if you want to, they do interlock. There's a small tab on one side and an indentation on the other, and you can just sort of slide the 2 together and they will interlock. If you wanted to, you can also remove the rails here. They also interlock in that same way. I recommend leaving them because it's nice to have some extra ground and power rails available. I'm not actually going to show you sticking them on, but you'd put them on something like this. So now these 2 boards are going to be, the bottom board and top board are connected by these threaded rods. So there are these 4 holes that will line up, and you'll go through like that, and you'll get them pretty far down in the end, just enough room to sort of clear that 9-volt battery holder with the 9-volt in it, just because it's nice to have your robot be more compact. So what you want to do is you're going to want a nut that's underneath your lower plate to hold it up. And I actually recommend having 2 nuts underneath here. The reason for that is just that you can, if you get the 2 nuts together, what you will find is it's far less likely to unscrew itself under vibration. So if you just take 2 nuts, put them together, and of course you don't need to have them like that just yet, and then you sort of rotate them in 2 different directions so that you're unscrewing the top nut down into the bottom one. They'll really lock together and they're not going to want to go anywhere. Then you're going to push this through one of the bottom holes. Or if it's tight, you may just sort of need to twist and push it. Then you can just use 1 nut on top of it and screw that down. Again, this is just going to hold it in place, keep it from bouncing around a little. And again, just sort of make those tight so it's not going to go anywhere. So from now on, you're never going to need to ever change these again, even if you're replacing batteries or something like that, because you can always just leave this plate together in this way. And now I'm just going to go ahead and do this for the other 3 quickly, or as quickly as I can manage. Feel free to skip past me putting this together because, let's face it, it's not very exciting to watch me do the same thing 4 times in a row, unless you're doing this as sort of a meditative exercise and putting this together along with me at the same time. In which case, well, you're probably faster than I am, but Maybe we're going at the same speed. Tighten that. Put that through. Tighten one on the bottom. And the last one. It doesn't really matter how much of a thread you have down here, but I keep it relatively short just because there's no real reason you want a huge thread sticking out underneath. Right, and all right, so the lower plate is now assembled. So you should have your 2 battery holders, your 1 Lego, and 4 rods together now. Now we're going to put the top plate on. Again, this back silver thing will be towards you and up. And you can see how it's going to fit. It's going to go so that those go over it. Don't do that just yet because we're going to want a nut underneath this thing, or again 2, in order to support that at a reasonable height. So on each of these posts, I'm just going to put down 2 nuts. And you're going to want them to end up at a reasonably level point. And again, you're going to want to clear this 9-volt battery holder, and the battery may stick up very slightly above it. So when you're putting the nuts in, the topmost of these 2 nuts, you want it to be a little bit above the 9-volt holder, just so you have a little clearance. Again, you'll be able to tweak and adjust these a little once you put the top board down. It doesn't have to be super precise. It doesn't have to be perfectly level. You probably want to aim for level, but as long as it's not too crazy, it should work just fine. Go to here. I'll say the one place where if you do want to use a wrench or a pair of pliers would be to lock these 2 nuts against each other. Again, just keeps it from spinning more. Let's see, so I'll call these approximately level. I'm sure I'll discover otherwise soon. Twist those against each other. And we will make sure we've got those 2 silver corners back towards each other. And you just sort of slide it down. Again, you'll probably discover you need to jiggle things around a little to make it fit. And again, I hope that you actually put your batteries in first, although you can change it later. Of course, I haven't managed to get it even remotely level, but that's okay. And we'll just tweak it now. Put that down. And push this a little further down. Seems sort of reasonable. And now I will just put one more nut on top of each of these. And we're done. Of course, once you stick these on here. So again, what this should look like is you'll see your Lego piece down here with 3 screws poking through it, your 2 battery holders, and your Arduino up top with your circuit boards and connected by 4 rods. And this thing isn't going anywhere, and now it's ready for you to build a robot and connect it in there. And in our next segment, I'll give you some hints on how you might want to do this. Of course, you can build any kind of robot you want with your Legos. I will sort of suggest a very simple design to start with and a couple of hints about some things you might want to consider.